Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone to part 3 of our series with Adam Quiney. I know that I, for one, have been practicing. I have been practicing all week, working on connection. And it's interesting. For me, it's been like a little shift in my brain as I've been mostly on the telephone with people to really remind myself to do that. And it's been really, really helpful. But practice does take time, and so I'd love it, Adam, if today one of the things that you can touch on is that second step of creating possibility, because I was able to do the connection, but I didn't bridge very successfully to possibility. But that's fine because I loved what was happening with connection, and I think we're going to also maybe take some of your other. Sorry, I'm admitting people as I'm talking. Some of your other questions too before we get started. But before I do that, Nanor, anything you'd like to say?
I'll handle admitting. You
Okay.
focus on, and I too practiced connecting, which was really fun because sometimes like even my kids like, Mom, you want to do something? And I usually, no, I have a lot to do. I can't. It's like, no, I can take 10, 15 minutes out and just connect even with them. And it's been so fun, actually. So even at that, even though I didn't create any new clients that way, but we did come up with lots of unique ways to solve things. So it's been fun. Thank you.
Excellent. Who else would like to share? Is there anything that you practiced last week or any questions that came up for you last week as you were thinking about this? You can raise your hand, unmute yourself, and just chime right in. If there's a couple of you, we'll sort you out. Who'd like to share anything that happened between last week and now? All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Adam. Adam, I'm not going to do your bio again today because I know we did it a couple of times, and I really want to get every little minute that we can of you. So I'm going to hand it over to Adam, and let's engage with this process. I'm so excited.
Cool. Thank you, Naid. Thank you, Nanor. So I'll just set a little bit of context for where we'll go today. I want to address some of the questions that you all had in your feedback, and thank you again for providing that feedback. I really can't emphasize enough how helpful it is. A lot of, we'll call it leadership, is in a way from an empowered place, shouting into the void, speaking our message into the world and letting the world respond however it responds, even if often it responds with silence. And we can empower that silence. We can find a powerful way to relate to that. And all the same, when we get response, when we get a feedback, when we hear a voice come back, that really makes a world of difference. And it helps me better engage with everyone and ensure that we're hitting the mark. So thank you, everyone, for the feedback that you did provide. Some valuable. We're going to address a little bit of what people raised in that feedback briefly. We'll talk a little bit about that shift into possibility, and then we're going to talk about the final step in this process of 6 steps, which is supporting our client to get to a yes. That's when they have that, I really want to do this, but the yes, but how do we actually support them in overcoming that, or in working through that, or whatever. I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. The answer is not by convincing them or bulldozing them or using spin selling techniques or any of that. So if you're like, oh, brother, that's what we're going to learn. No, it's not. You can rest easy. There's a much more beautiful place. And I really hold that moment is one of the most sacred moments in coaching. And it's also the moment that most of us in the coaching profession, we actually abdicate from the opportunity to serve our client in that place. So I really believe with a shift in the way we're relating to that, a context change there, that'll start to become one of the places you might still have anxiety or fear or nervousness show up around it, but it'll start to become something you really get excited about because you'll see that there's this beautiful place to support your client before they've even started to work with you. Last thing is that, again, we have but a short hour together. And just like there was an infographic for the first 6 steps that we laid out, this last step is so important, I think, to the process of creating clients and serving people, that I have a whole infographic for you around this. So it'll walk you through the whole process. So if we don't completely solve this now and forever, you've got a reference that you'll get at the end of this to support you going through that. So a couple of things. The first, I want to actually speak to what you just shared, Nanor, which is this idea of taking 10 to 15 minutes with your children to connect with them a little bit more, which I love. That's amazing. And I want to give people the possibility that even if it was 10 to 15 seconds more that we're connecting with someone, that makes a difference. Because typically we relate to people kind of like they're this black box that spits out a set of outputs, and we spit in a set of inputs, and then whatever needs to happen happens. People come to us and they're like, can you do this for me? And I either tell them yes or no, and then they go away and I can go back to doing whatever I'm meant to be doing. And even if we just take those 10 to 15 seconds to ask ourselves the question, who's this person being in this moment? What's going on for this person? We don't even have to do anything different. We might not change the response that we give them. We may not change our action, but we're now a little bit more plugged in to the human being in front of us. And as we do that, that's naturally going to come across energetically, if nothing else. Sometimes it'll drastically change the way we respond to them. Other times we may be like, oh, they seem really frantic and scared as they ask me this. I'm not going to take that personally. They're probably just scared. So it opens up a whole deeper layer of possibility for our interaction with that person. And that's really the heart of what we're trying to get to, is for all of us to be able to really connect with the human being across from us. So beautiful work, Nanor. And it can be even simpler if you're like, oh my God, well, she's got 10 to 15 minutes. I don't have that. I guarantee you have 10 to 15 seconds, or a breath of air to connect with someone a little more deeper. So we can always play with 1% more. As humans, we tend to be very all or nothing. So we're like, I'm busy. There's no way I can connect with this person. Oh my God, Adam's telling me I've got to make tea for this person and set the table for them. And my dishes are dirty. And how? You don't have to do any of that. Just 1% more connecting with the human being. Let me have a sip of tea now that I've said that word.
And Adam, if I can share, I didn't see it the way you're sharing right now, but I did do 1% more and reached out to a potential client that I've been procrastinating on. But I'm like, okay, what if just 1% more? What would that? I didn't think of it that way, but I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to connect. What if I just do one quick text? And things have opened up. I already have a meeting on Monday, but anyway, nice. So no client yet, but my point. So thank you.
Beautiful work. I really love that. I love hearing that you're practicing.
Yeah.
The 2 pieces of feedback I was most present to were, one, what about if I'm introverted? Like, this sounds great, Adam, connect. But like, I'm an introverted person. So how can I just go out and magically connect with people? And the other part of that was like, yeah, but what about COVID? Like, there's COVID alive right now. So connection looks different. It's not the same thing. So let's talk first about COVID. And I want to acknowledge it creates a shift. Like, the way that I created connection in my life prior to March 15th, or whenever it all came tumbling down for us, was that my wife and I would go to events that we were really inspired by. So we would go to, there's an event called World Domination Summit in Portland. It's much more love and less domination, but it's a really cool event. So we'd go to there and we'd meet people. We'd go to meetups that they had and connect with human beings. And when COVID actually hit, we were on our way to an event called South by Southwest that some of you may have heard of in Austin, Texas. And so this is what we would do. We would go to these places, we would take part in whatever was going on at the event, and naturally find ourselves in conversation with the people that we were with. And then from there, we would follow these steps, not to try to get them somewhere because that just felt good. Oh, I'm going to connect with this person in line that's talking with me. Oh, what are you up to in life, et cetera, et cetera. We can't go to events anymore. And so I've had to look at where are other places that I can connect with people? What are other kinds of virtual events? And where are people like me showing up? So the good news is that every single person in the world is in the same conversation you are. Every single person in the world is like, what? But I'm used to doing this and now I can't do this. So how do I get to do the same thing? So we're not on an island trying to solve this ourselves. Many people are looking to figure out, how am I going to connect with human beings in new ways? I can give you some examples that I've taken on in my life, but I want to be clear that part of this comes from the distinction between needing to know how to and choosing to. So where most people get stuck, especially when there's a little bit of fear in the space, is on the question of, but how do I do it? And it's rarely how that's our problem. If you Google, how do I, and then put whatever comes after that, you're going to get a wealth of answers. And you'll also find that none of those answers seem to solve the problem. And the problem is often because we are not yet choosing to. We're not committed to connecting, even though it needs to shift, even though COVID has changed things. And so because that's a little bit scary to go down this route, we hang out and trying to figure out how to. Maybe if I can just get the right set of steps. That may or may not apply for you. I just want to set that out as a context because it'd be really powerful to look for ourselves. Hey, is this a problem that I don't know how? Or is it a problem that I'm just not really fully committing to do this and finding a way come hell or high water? Everyone following along with me so far? Okay, everyone get this is not about blaming you or anything like that. That's not how we use a distinction. Okay, good. That was more for me than anyone else. So some of the things I've been looking into are what kind of online groups are meeting regularly. And one of the groups that I found was named, it was a group called METAL, which stands for Music, Entertainment, Technology, Arts, and Leadership. And so that's a group of men. They got created as a men's work kind of container. And so they meet every week and have speakers and then get to know each other each week. There's another group called, I believe it's called Lunch Club. You can look it up. It's something, I think the webpage is lunchclub.ai. But the idea is that you sign up for this and then you get paired with someone over lunch and you just get to know them. So you connect with them for an hour and talk about whatever you talk about. A third thing that I've found recently is a group called C-Suite Executive, which is a group of CEOs and executive leadership people that just meet. And it started because the person that ran it missed going to the bar after work on Fridays. And he was like, man, this sucks. I can't do that anymore. And I want to do that. And so he created this group to get together and just talk for an hour. It's okay if you don't like the sound of any of these. The point that I want to make is that there are opportunities aplenty. They are out there. We just have to avail themselves. And I also want to make sure that it's clear, I don't hold any of this like, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of it. I procrastinated on metal for 2 months after I found out about it. It just sat in my calendar every Saturday taunting me. Look, here's the thing you're not going to go to. I had to bring it to my coach and say, hey, I keep saying I'm going to do this thing and I'm not. So there are many, many, many ways that we can connect during COVID. And what is required is a real commitment to connect and then to start trying things out, to find stuff. You can also hold virtual get-togethers, webinars. I found that people are really thirsty for opportunities for leadership right now, because instead what we have a lot of in the world is rhetoric, which is kind of the antithesis of leadership in a lot of ways. Let me just check and see if there's anything more I want to say on that point before I shift to introversion. The thing that I'll remind all of us, myself included, is that this is what happens for me is I join a group like that and I start to connect with people, and it takes me a while. It takes me a while to get my footing. It takes me a while to like, okay, who are these people? Where do I, Rachel, it's a great question. Rachel's asking, how did I find those groups? I Googled for them. I searched like, hey, where are people in these industries meeting? What are people doing now? It took a bit of time. And then I found a bunch that sucked. And then over time from practicing and looking, I started to find some that actually felt like a fit and I wanted to be a part of. As I joined them and started to attend them, here's what happened in my head was like the first call, I was like, okay, that was pretty good. Not too bad. I didn't like that part where we worked on an elevator pitch. That felt kind of yucky and I hate that conversation, but I liked the rest of it. And then the second week I attended, and that's when I started to go, crap, I'm not getting clients. Crap, I'm not doing this fast enough. This needs to happen sooner. This isn't going to work. Oh no. What's happening there is I'm getting afraid. And from my fear, I'm jumping to the end of these 6 steps. So I've lost sight that my job right now is to connect, really get to know, to be with people. And what I'll share, just a win, because it's cool to share wins, is most recently from that group, I've been in it for about 2 months now, simply connecting with people, getting to know them. When someone has a story that's interesting, I reach out to them and say, hey, your story's fascinating. What's your deal? And as I talked to this one person, it turned out he was a director. He directed a whole bunch of movies. He was someone with a Wikipedia page. I've never talked to someone with a Wikipedia page before. It's like, wow, this is cool. And in that conversation at the end of it, he asked, hey, I love what you do. Like this whole coaching thing's fascinating. How do we do that? Like I don't know if I have money. I don't know what that looks like. So this is part of the magic that can happen when we put our attention on connecting and then start to shift into possibility. Your mileage will vary. It might not go the same way. I share that story because I want a presence front and center that I get scared too. It's not like I have this all sorted, and that we're constantly having to relearn and re-find our feet amidst these steps and find our way back to like, hold on, where are we? I need to connect with people again. Okay, I'm connecting really well. Let's start to draw out a bit of possibility. Everyone following along? Is there anyone that's like, I totally disagree, or maybe finds this tacky or not aligned with anything I'm sharing at this point? Great, that's a great sign. Okay, so let's talk about introversion. And then I think we're gonna start to shift to our topic at hand for today. So the conversation about introversion goes something along these lines. Typically, I'm gonna generalize a little bit. The conversation is something along the lines of, well, it's different for me than for you, Adam, or whoever. I'm introverted. I don't connect with people that way. I don't like going to big events, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, how do I do this? Some flavor of that. So I want to offer a theory on introversion that is worth 0. It is worth nothing, but is a theory that I work with in terms of the model I use in my coaching, which is based off of this book, which I've written. And this model is an ontological model. The ontological model suggests that we as humans have fundamental qualities of being that we innately imbue. We're born with these qualities of being. We live our life and then we pass away. And those qualities that we exude as an individual are there from the moment we were born to the moment we die. There's something inherent in us. This isn't a scientific premise. This would be kind of like asking yourself the question, what is it about a rock that makes it rocky? What is the rockiness that I feel and experience with this rock? And you could start to ask questions like, well, is it from a volcano? Therefore, it means it's a rock. But if we start to pull away at that, we're like, yeah, but some rocky things are not volcanic. They're this. And if you went far enough, you'd be like, a rock's not even a rock. It's a set of molecules and atoms and a bunch of space in between all of them. So there's this fundamental nature we call rock. And with human beings, the premise for ontological work is that we have a fundamental set of qualities that we each imbue. You can probably all get from me that one of those qualities I bring into the world is wit. When you're with me, there's like a degree of wittiness in the space. Can you just put your hand up if you can see this, if you can get this about me? Great, thank you. I feel great about myself in this moment. So we have the light, and all of you have your light, and you can't see it. That's the nature of this. And the reason you can't see it is because your light is shining the moment you're born. And every time you come into a space, you're bringing your light with you. And every time you leave a space, you take your light with you. The rest of us get the opportunity of being in that space when you're not. So when Rachel comes into a room, we're like, oh, it just got a little more Rachel-y in here. We might be like, just got a little more radiant in here, or a little more connection came into the room. And we can kind of feel that. There's an experience we have. And when Rachel leaves, we're like, oh, it just got a little less Rachel-y. She never gets that experience. For her, it would be like trying to see the thing she sees the world through. So we can't see our light. Everyone with me so far? I promise is going to come around to introversion. So another quality that I possess is that of connection. I like that thumbs up, Manor. So the quality of connection is that when someone with this quality is in the room is more connected. They're chatty, they can connect easily with individuals. They enter a space and suddenly more people are talking. Someone knows someone else's name that they didn't before. There's simply more connection when they come into the space. This is the last thing I'm going to say about this model, because then I'm going to talk about introversion. We can see these qualities even if we can't distinguish them. If you've ever been around a little child and you found yourself saying, this is the weirdest thing, but this kid's like a wise old soul, that is you being present to the quality of wisdom inherent in that child. It's a weird thing. Has anyone ever found themselves saying something or like, this little baby is hilarious. This kid has a great sense of humor, or like, wow, look at the connection this kid has. So we can feel these things. We just don't tend to distinguish it. We don't have the words to pluck it out and be like, this is what I'm feeling. That's an experience. And that is a part of the ontological nature of human. We don't do any of that because that'd be weird. So we just say wise old soul in front of me. Okay. Here's what happens as we grow up. We start with these qualities, these light that is ours and uniquely ours. And then we're trained by the world around us that some parts of us are unacceptable. Some parts of us are too much. So for example, I might have learned being connection, I want to connect with everyone. And then when I open myself up and go, I love you, the person says, I don't like you, your face looks stupid. And it's devastating to me. And what happens is around people or situations or circumstances that show up that way, I conclude that who I am is too much. It's unsafe to be the way I am. And so I turn the volume down. I withdraw from my connection. In other parts of our life growing up, we learn that who we are is not enough. So if you are someone who is innately generosity, just brings generosity into the space, and someone for whatever reason says, wow, that was really selfish of you. And hey, no surprise here, children are selfish. Frankly, humans are. It's part of who we are. We are a little selfish. And so when someone tells that person who is innately generosity that they're selfish, what that person learns to do in those situations is crank it up. Oh, got it. I'm wrong. I'm not generous enough in those situations. So around people like that, I'm going to overexpress this quality of who I am. So what happens is we have the light that we are, and then in certain situations, we learn to either underexpress what we are or to overexpress what we are. Is this making sense to everyone? Great. So we have the light, and then we have what I call the shadows, the overexpression and the underexpression. We tend to end up in some situations overexpressing and in other situations underexpressing. Here's what happens with people who are connection is in situations where, I'm going to use myself as an example, in situations where I'm afraid of occurring robotic or awkward or disconnected, maybe I'm at a networking event and I'm talking to you and you're not responding quite the way I want, I crank my connection up because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of being awkward with you. So I start to talk a lot and I fill every single moment in the conversation with more conversation. This is what we would often refer to as extroversion. We'd be like, wow, look at Adam. He's got the gift of glib and gab and he can talk for hours. He's chatting and chatting and chatting and chatting and he's working the room. What you're not seeing is underneath all the doing of connection, underneath all of that extroversion, I'm actually lonely. I'm actually creating distance between me and the people I'm talking with. I'm filling all of the space with more conversation, but there's no actual connection. This makes sense so far? The flip side to this is that there's many situations where I learned I don't want to connect with people in these situations because I know how it goes. It's uncomfortable. And so around those people, what I learned to do is withdraw. I go inwards. I connect with myself. I paint these miniatures that are on shelves that you can't quite see behind me. That's what I'll do on a Friday night. And furthermore, I'll be really empowered by this decision. So I've created a strategy to not have to confront what's scary. And then I can do that strategy and I'm really empowered by it. And that looks on the outside like introversion. Could everyone see how from the nucleus of connection, we can end up with these twin shadows, one of which occurs like extroversion and one of which occurs like introversion? Is there anyone that's like, I'm not following at all. I'm confused. I have a question. Great. What I notice with most of these approaches to typing, what I notice with most of these approaches to assessing someone's personality tendencies or stuff like that, is it tends to operate at the level of the surface, which is where our shadows are manifest and shown. And so often when someone talks about introversion, we relate to it like, that's just who I am. The way I am is introverted. And this gives us a lot of relief, because it's like permission for me not to have to confront that scary thing over there. It's just the way I am, that I paint miniatures like this on a Friday night. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. I've painted all these miniatures there. They're beautiful. And I've done it on Friday nights. That is no joke. And so we hold ourselves, well, I would do this thing, but I need to work around this. The truth is that who we are is connection. And there's simply an edge for us to lean into here. It's scary for us to own all of the light that we are, because growing up, we were trained that the light we are is not enough or too much. It's unsafe to be who you are fully in the world. So often, this is not a prescription, but often when I hear people say, I just can't do this because I'm introverted, to me, I often hear, there's probably a place this person is not yet able to own the connection that they are. And most of you drawn into the field of coaching will have some degree of the quality of being that is connection. That's just inherent. That's those of us drawn into this work tend to be fascinated by people. And whether we identify as an introvert or an extrovert, we're still fascinated with people. We just use that distinction introvert to mean like, I don't like crowds of people. Most of the people that I know that identify as an introvert, like myself, we like to go deep with people. We're like, let's go one-on-one. I'll go deep with you one-on-one until I feel like I can't anymore, and then I'll pull out. But most of us identifying that way, we'd love to do that. It's like those groups of 8 people. Those are kind of edgy, because I'm like, how do I hold the attention here? How do I go deep with this one person? I'm getting scared over here. So as a starting point for all of this, what I would say is that when you hear yourself saying, what about the fact that I'm an introvert and I don't like doing this? The question I would invite you to be with is, what am I afraid of? What is it that I'm resisting here? And what if who I am actually is connection? And this is simply a place for me to lean into that edge a little bit more. That won't solve your problems, but it's going to open up new possibility. If the conversation you're in with yourself is, I'm just introverted and this is the way I am, well, that doesn't leave a lot of possibility for this game we're trying to play where you're connecting more with the world. Whereas if you were in a conversation with yourself where you're saying, there's this thing I do called introversion, and it's actually something I do out of fear, that might start to open up a little more possibility to lean into, to start to practice more connection. It doesn't mean you won't have resistance to it. It doesn't mean it won't be scary. If it wasn't scary, there'd be no new possibility. If it wasn't a little bit scary, there'd be no edge to lean over. And that's the game we're playing. Anyone with any objections or a yeah, but to what I've raised before I go further? Yes, Karen.
I loved what you just said. And I got stuck in it and then I didn't hear the rest of it about introversion, that last bit. And I was evoking my nephew as you were describing it. And I went, oh, wow, this is really cool. So if you stick with I'm introverted, this is the way that I am versus what's the verses again? Can you clarify that one more time?
Yeah. So again, none of this is fact, right? We're not saying this is the truth, but we're creating a different story to relate to ourselves through, which will open up more possibility. So the one story is I'm an introvert. It's just the way I am. I'm a bit of a fixed object. So my only possibility is, given this is the box I live in, what's the best arrangement of my life? The other story would be, what if introversion is something I learned to do when I'm afraid?
That's what it was.
Then when we notice ourselves resistant to like an opportunity to connect, we could start to get curious about that and be like, what am I afraid of? And what's the possibility on the other side of this fear? What might become available if this fear never stalked me ever again? Yeah. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, completely. Thank you.
And sorry, was there a follow-up?
No, I just said that answered it completely. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Anyone else before we move on? Great. I see you deep in thought chat. Is this landing? I see you nodding as well. I just want to make sure. You're muted, I think. Yes, you're muted. I do it too. You're still muted. Maybe Nahid has the control. Still. Okay. Oh, there we go. I think you're unmuted now. Let's hear. Huh, I can't hear your audio. Okay, well, we'll just, we'll leave that there. I'm gonna read Tanya's or Tanya. So Tanya said, can you please repeat that question? I think you're referring to Karen's, which is, we have the two kind of places we might come from, or the two stories we tend to find ourselves in. Oh, I've got an echo now. So everyone mute if you're off mute, just so that we get rid of whatever that echo might be. There we go. It sounds like it's gone. So the question is, we can either be in, I'm an introvert, and therefore, what do I need to do given that this is the way I am? Or the question of, given that introversion might be a strategy I've learned to use when I'm afraid, what might I be afraid of right now? And what might be possible on the other side of this fear if I were to lean into it? So just changing that story will open up a lot. You guys are asking superb questions. Thank you, everyone. So Nahid, I know you wanted me to talk about possibility. I'm going to have you check my feet because I've used up a half hour of our time. We can switch to getting our client to yes. We can even use the next, we have a whole nother session to really cover that. We can talk about possibility here. What is your sense?
I would say, you know, maybe touch on it very, very slightly as you move into what you intended to talk about today.
Great. So the notion of possibility, this will be a bit of a refresher or a recap from what we talked about last time, is that connection is really getting what's going on with the other person. We can connect with them while we're talking about anything. And often that's where we start because we're kind of new at this game and we're learning what's the level of intimacy that currently exists between myself and this other person. So sometimes the level of intimacy we're at is like really small talk. I like your suit. That's a nice tie. Where did you get it? Super safe. It's that part where we're feeling each other out. We're like, I don't know you. I don't know if you're going to like me if I show you all of who I am. I'm not sure what's going to go on. And some of us, the way we approach those situations where we're like, I don't know if you're going to like me if I show all of who I am, is we go, here's all of who I am. Tell me immediately if you like me. So we try to like dive head first into intimacy. And then when the person sort of doesn't join us there, we judge them for being the sort of person that just doesn't like, or that just wants small talk. It's never really that someone just wants to do small talk. It's that we haven't created the ground to deepen intimacy with someone yet. So remember, one of the fundamental parts of our work as coach is to meet people where they're at. That includes if where people are at with us is like kind of in that small talk phase, great, we start there. And then we be the ones to deepen intimacy with them as it comes. So if I say to someone, hey, how's it going? And we're at this networking event, they're like, yeah, it's good. It's good. How about you? I might be like, okay, well, I'm gonna take a swing here and I'm gonna share like, I'm a little scared, a little bit nervous, but I'm kind of enjoying it. Like I'm trying some new stuff and I met a few cool people and often I get scared at these events and that's okay too. So I've taken one step further and now I see, is this person going to come down and join me or are they going to stay up here? And if they're going to stay up here, then my job is to like allow them the space to do that. Creating possibility with someone in our conversation is the next step. And it is a step that deepens intimacy. So creating possibility with someone is about getting curious about this person's life if it wasn't filtered through their lens of what is possible and what is not possible. All of us have a lens like this. If I talk to, can't remember if I gave this example last week. I think I did. Like if I talk to a lawyer who works 60 hours a week and I ask them, what would you love? What would be an amazing life for you? Often what they'll tell me is, yeah, I'd love to work 50 hours a week and maybe make a little less money, but that'd be perfect. And it's like, really? 50 hours? That's not a very big dream that you're making for yourself. And the reason is that they've got all of the elements of their life up on scales. And they're like, well, I can work 10 hours less, and then I can live making $10,000 less a year. That's the best arrangement inside the invisible box they can't see they've drawn around their head. When we're evoking possibility, we're asking questions beyond that box. So if we were to talk to that lawyer and say, like, yeah, what I don't know, what do you want? Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? There's a question that starts to evoke some possibility with them. They told me, I'd love to work 50 hours a week. That'd be amazing, Adam. Holy cow. I might start to get curious about that and say, that's intriguing. Why in 10 years' time, 10 hours less? Like, what is it about 10 hours less? Well, that's how I can do it. And that's the best thing I can get. And I might start to get curious with them, like, well, would you want something beyond that if you could? Like, is 10 hours really the be all and end all, or is there something deeper? Well, I mean, I'd love to do that. I'd love to work 20 hours, but there's no way I could get everything done. So what they're telling me is the boundaries of their box. It's possible to work 50 hours a week. It's impossible to work 20 hours a week. And so we want to get curious about these things that people have decided are unavailable to them. These things that people have decided, this is impossible for me. The way we do that is with our curiosity. Tell me, why is 20 hours impossible? Well, there's no way that I could meet all the court cases, do the blah, 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 blah. Okay, got it. Would you want it if it was possible? So we're kind of asking these questions that an innocent child would ask. This is what it means to explore possibility with someone. And as we bring this into the space, what this does is it gives people and us a reason to then invite into a coaching conversation. I got to tell you, Mr. Lawyer, what you're talking about is really intriguing to me. I was a lawyer myself. I'm fascinated by this notion that time is so fixed in the practice of law. And I'm also finding you really intriguing. Do you want to have a coaching conversation where we just look at the impossibility of working less than 50 hours a week and see if we can move something out of the way? I think that'd be really intriguing for me. And I think it might shift something for me or for you. Would you be interested in that? So we're inviting them into a conversation for a reason, to explore that 20-hour impossibility. Is this making sense? Great. I really want to touch on this last step. So we're going to move on from there. But what I would invite everyone to do is now, did the infographic go out? Has everyone gotten that? Or are you frozen, or am I frozen?
No.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Go ahead, Nahi.
But you're muted currently.
I don't actually remember getting it, so I assumed it went to Nanor.
Okay, great. So I'm going to make sure that gets sent out.
The two of us will have to figure that out together.
Perfect. Okay, great.
We'll get stuff to you all.
Perfect. So you're all going to
get our coordination down.
Yeah, great. So you're all going to get an infographic that lays out these 6 steps and provides some detail. So if you're like, I'm not taking enough notes, don't worry. It's all going to be laid out. It's very clean. I think it's quite elegant. You can walk through it. And that'll speak a little more to possibility. And if you get that and you're still like, I really want us to touch more on this, please put that in the feedback so we know, and then we'll make the next session about that. Next session's a little bit open so we can kind of work with whatever's showing up. So if that is something you're really wanting to create, great, we'll make a point of going there. For now, I want to talk about getting our client to yes and this notion of our client's objections. I want to open this conversation by hearing from 2 people how you feel, what's the experience that shows up in you when you're with someone, you tell them what it's going to cost to work with you, and they go, oh, I'd really like to do that, but. Yes, Karen.
I'll go. I just had this experience last
Great.
night. So I've been working with a client through her corporation for a number of years, and she sent me an urgent text that she wanted to meet this week. What did I have available, and what are my fees? And she's never paid for me. She's never paid for me. The company's paid for it, and I have a reduced fee when an individual is paying for it. So I responded, and what I got was silence. So the yes, it's the yes, but the but part is silence. And Well, it's been a long time since that happened to me. And so I'm like, wow, not quite sure what to do with that. Could be she's busy. I don't want to make a story up around it. It's just, she wanted to talk this afternoon. What she did come back with, today isn't going to work because I have somebody else who wanted the same time.
Right.
And so that's what I said to her. So that's the story.
And what showed up for you when you were met with that silence?
Well, what showed up was a whole range of emotions because we, it seemed like we had a relationship and not a, we weren't a transaction. And so
Great.
So the distinction would be, I try to have relationships with my clients. And in this case, this was feeling like a transaction. It's like, wow, this is really bizarre.
Got it. Great.
I had one other client like that who was not a good fit for me. And it was because her whole perspective was transactional. And we completed the work and I never wanted to go back with her again because she wasn't my client.
Got it.
So
yeah, absolutely.
That's what I think is my client. So I'm like stuck.
Great. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. So there's sort of like, we put something on the table. We're like, here's the bar to cross. And then, they show up the way they show up. And then we have an experience, a range of emotions, oh God, relationship, transaction, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to hear from one more person. So if you want me to hurry up and get on with the point, start telling us your experience when this happens.
This is Jeannie. What happens to me is I kind of freeze inside, thinking that they don't find me valuable, or I haven't said the right thing, or I'm just not good at sales, or,
Right.
I'm just starting to tell myself a lot of negative press.
Great. So perfect. Can anyone else, just a show of hands, relate to some aspect of what's been shared so far? Great. So this tends to be the way it goes, is we put the price, we put the commitment in front of the client, and then the client has whatever reaction they have to it. And then we make it meaningful. We make their reaction mean something. We make it mean things like, oh my God, do I just suck at sales? Do I just need to figure out how to do spin selling or get a funnel so that it doesn't have to go this way? Maybe I just don't have a strong enough niche. Maybe I need to, sometimes coaches will do this one. They're like, I've decided I'm only going to work with people that are absolutely committed to changing their life, which is code for I'm only going to work with people that don't balk at my prices. Sometimes what we do is we reduce our prices. We're like, well, I must be charging too much, and so I'm going to charge too little. I want to give you a different frame for all of this. The frame is that there is a reason your client is not creating what they want to create yet in their life. They're reliable and predictable to create a whole bunch of stuff, and all of that stuff is amazing. And the reason I assert to work with a coach is to create something outside of what's predictable for us. There's a reason they are not creating that stuff outside of what is predictable for them. And part of that includes that there's some fear involved. Whenever they come to the point where they're going to hire you as a coach, they're going to be confronted by that exact same stuff. It would be weird if they didn't, because working with you as a coach is going to move them through the very stuff they've been avoiding, the very thing that they're afraid of up to this point. And so what we're doing when we put a proposal in front of our client is really helping them get present to the life that they say they want, and then helping them see what it's going to require from them in terms of a commitment. And what most people do at that point is they go, you know what, life's not that bad right now. Or I really want this, but next time. Or sure, I'm totally going to do this. I just have to earn the money first. And whatever is showing up and getting in the way of them saying yes to you is the exact same thing showing up and getting in the way everywhere else in life. I really want to go back to school and get that degree I've been talking about for the last 10 years. I just have to get enough money. I'll earn the money first, then I'll do the thing. So it's really important for us as coaches not to make it meaningful when the clients have an objection to working with us. And frankly, if you're drawing out any kind of reasonable commitment from your client when it comes to working with you, what I mean by this is you can lower your rates to $20, and that doesn't really demand much commitment from your clients. They will give you $20 worth of commitment. And you've probably had this experience. where some people, you can charge them this amount of money that doesn't mean anything to them. And that's kind of how they show up. Just to be clear, there's no amount of money that solves this problem. You can charge $100,000 to work with you, and you'll find yourself working with billionaires that could care less about that money, and they just don't show up. If you know any of those billionaires, put them in touch with me. But the point remains the same. Solving this by charging a certain amount of money is kind of missing the mark. So what we want to really get is that what's getting in the way of the client saying yes to you is really sacred. This is the first opportunity you're getting to see the way the client shows up when they see some possibility they want in their life, and then see that there's something in the way of it. And then the way they're going to be with you in that conversation is exactly the way that they show up around this thing everywhere else in their life. Everyone following along with this part so far? Great. So here's what most coaches do at this point. Many of them, the client goes, oh, I really want to, but now's not the time. The coach goes, no problem. Totally got it. Let's just end the call here. You're great. Let me know when it is the time. I love you. You're super duper. Goodbye. Which would be a little bit like if you were on a call with your client and they're like, look, Karen, I've got this amazing project. When I think about it, it brings tears to my eyes. I'm so excited about it. It involves clean drinking water in Africa. I really think this technology can make a difference. And you have them go and get clear on what it's going to take. And they come back to you next week and they go, you know, Karen, I was thinking the tap water here in Portland's pretty good. And like, I'm doing my bit around my work here, changing recycling bins to be a little bit larger. And so I do feel like I'm doing pretty good. And so I'm not really going to do that thing. And you just went, okay, got it. Well, let me know next time you do want to do that thing. Can you guys see how we'd be leaving our client a little bit at the altar, so to speak? We're just kind of like, oh yeah, you've got this project. That would be great. But Tanya, thank you for that. Yes, that's a very enthusiastic yes. So this is what we tend to do as coaches. And the reason we do it is because we're scared of being pushy with the client. We know that experience when we have a yes, but, and then the person responds by trying to come over the top and get us. They bulldoze us, or they try to convince us, or they don't listen or respect where we're at. Anyone had that experience? Great. Okay. That's important. And so we end up in one of these two extremes. On the one hand, we're either trying to convince the client or bulldoze or tell them that this doesn't make sense or that they should just do it. Or on the other hand, we collapse. We fold in and we just say, got it, no worries. I love you. I think you can do this, but let me know if you ever want support. And on the one hand, that sort of collapse, if we call it that, is a bit better than bulldozing them, but it's still missing the mark. So here's the opportunity with the client, is to really take this moment to support them with what is showing up and getting in the way right here, right now. It's as though they have a project that they want support with, and you're helping them with that project before they've paid you a cent. Now, it's a little weird because the project's called Hire Rachel. But nevertheless, that's the project they're working on. There's this thing that they can see present in their life. They can see some of the stuff that's going to get them there. And they've got fear showing up, telling them to go back to the status quo, telling them to go back and do the thing that they know to do just a little bit longer. And then maybe will be the time to climb that wall. Is everyone following along? Okay, great. Are there any yeah buts or what ifs in the space at this point? Mel, it looks like you might have one.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that by the client not working with us, that they're not going to hit their goals. And so I think that was the question that I had. Right.
So they may, right? It's possible, like someone might be reliable. The way I want to frame this is there is a result your client's reliable for. And there's a reason they would hire you so as to create something that they are not reliable for, that is not already predictable. Otherwise, why hire you, right? To make them feel better, to inspire them, to clap as they do stuff, that's all fine. But like the real meat of this work is we support people to create something greater than they would unto themselves. And so I'm not even really saying without hiring you, your client won't create this. They may very well, but they'll do it in a way that's predictable. For example, they may make the income that they've said they want to make, but they'll predictably do it in such a way that they're left bedraggled and exhausted and resentful of the world around them. Or they may buy that house that they're talking about, but it'll take them 10 years instead of the 1 year that they really want to make it happen. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying, we're not trying to hold it like, if you don't work with me, you're going to fail and never achieve your goals. That's not what we're aiming for. It's more that there is something on the line for which working with a coach will support them in creating. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're saying instead of stopping at the objection, of really getting more curious as to why they were coming to you in the first place.
Yes.
To understand more deeply and be able to talk through that as opposed to just shutting down.
That's the first thing. Even before we've made a proposal, we should be clear with the client, why work with me? So often we rush to the proposal because we're afraid of it. We're scared, so we try to get it out of the way. But that would be like me coming up to you and proposing a, 35-year amortized mortgage for $2 million without getting clear at all on the house you want. And you're just going to be like, let me check my bank account to see if I can, you know what? No, right? So we have to get, hopefully at this point in the conversation, your client's clear on some stuff they want to create. And so that's the reason for them to say yes. Now what I'm saying is, when you next say, this is what it requires, this is what the commitment from you looks like, their fear shows up, just like it will everywhere else on the planet, everywhere else in their life. Have I left you more confused, or are you with me?
No, I don't think I was confused, but I think it's like, now we're at the point where we're talking about money.
Yes.
And it doesn't always mean that, like, they could legitimately not have the money.
100%.
Like
100%.
That's what I'm like, well, what? So I'll be like, I'll just throw it out there. Like I looked you up online because I was like, what would it be like to have Adam as a coach? And then it was like tens of thousands of dollars. And I was like, yeah, my salary doesn't cover that. And I'm not looking to make the kind of money that would be able to pay for you as my coach. So I was like, so I'm kind of putting myself in that scenario right now.
Yes.
To go through, like, what would that conversation look like between us?
Yes, absolutely. I love all of what you just shared. So one, for some people, it is too far a gap, and that's okay. What I notice happens is that because we're afraid in this conversation, where it comes to dancing with our client when their fear has shown up, we jump straight to it being too far of a gap. And then we either compromise our rates, or we just say, okay, no problem, let me know sometime. So with the remaining time, I'm gonna sort of very quickly talk about the context for what we'll do. And then, assuming that there's a desire to go deeper in this, next week, what we'll talk about is how to actually exercise this. So the context for the conversation with our client is twofold. It's ultimately, they say, I'd love to do this, but there's something in the way. Mel, I'd love to work with you, but I don't have $6,000. I'm just making a number up, to be clear. I don't have $6,000. So what we want to do in that situation is first really acknowledge, like, I get that. Totally makes sense. And we want to really get in our being, like, of course there's something in the way. There almost has to be something in the way. Otherwise, they would already be doing this stuff. And the second thing that we want to do is invite them into a conversation where we support them. Here's how that sounds. I get it. So there's something in the way. Like, you want to do this. I'm not hearing you say you don't want to do this, but you're trying to make my feelings feel okay. You want this. There's just something in the way and you can't see how to get out of it. So what I do is I support people in exactly that. I support people to get clear on what they really want, to get clear on what it's going to require. And then when they can't figure out how to get past that, we support them in creating whatever shift is needed to not have that thing stop them. This is what I'll be doing constantly with you. This is our work, working together. Would you like some of that support right now around this particular thing that's in the way of what you say you want? So can everyone get, there's more, but like, we're helping them see the picture and then asking them, right? We're checking in with them each step of the way. Everyone clear on that? This is how we ensure we're not being pushy. We continue to check in with the client to ensure that we're being of service to them. And if at any point your client says, I don't like this, your job is to totally honor that. Be like, got it, no worries. Do you want to just end the call? Where do we go from here? We step over all of this because we're afraid. So one, would you like some support? And if they're a yes to that, then what we do is we take working together totally off the conversation. We say, let's sweep working together off the table. Let's just look at this like there's something you want, and the thing getting in the way is money, or the thing getting in the way is time. And then we start to support them to see the pattern as a whole that's showing up here, so they can see that what's showing up here is the same thing showing up there and over here and everywhere in their life. Does this make sense? I know that I'm giving you all a very sort of high level kind of perspective. What I'm intending to do is lay the context for this so that we can dive into it next week. What questions are showing up here? Tanya. So Tanya asked, by supporting them, what do I mean? So by supporting them, what we mean is to coach them. What we do as coaching, ostensibly, is here's coaching in a nutshell. People are in front of a tree and they're like, I want something, and this tree is in the way. And so they're like, what they do is they go, I know, I need to go and get an axe because then I can cut this tree down. And they cut the tree down, and then they walk forward and there's a new tree in their way. And they're like, okay, I think the problem is I need better biceps. So they start a regimen of bicep exercises and they cut down that tree. Then they go and there's a new tree. So at this point they go, okay, I think the problem is I need a better millstone. I need axe cutting techniques, and I need to work my biceps out even more so that I can keep doing this because I notice I'm getting tired. And so that's how we progress into our life. We're solving the problem that's immediately in front of us without realizing that it's also that is part of the greater cycle that we're in. And what we do as coaches is we help people gain altitude to see, oh, I'm in a forest. No amount of bicep workout routine and millstones and learning axe cutting techniques is going to really resolve the thing in front of me. So that's what we start to do when we support them around money. And we'll talk in great detail next week, assuming that's where the group desires that we go. That's what we spend our time doing, is supporting them to see that the thing in the way is not actually the thing in the way. We help them see, oh, wow, this is all part of a much greater pattern that has a really predictable way that it goes that keeps us locked in the same cycle, so that it's always, I just got to get the money. Okay, I got the money here, but now I just got to get the money for this next thing. And then we continue to do this. Any other questions before? I know that it's tight. I apologize for not managing our time better, but what's the last question that we've got in the space that I can speak to? Yes, chat, and you'll have to unmute. You're still muted. I can't seem, it doesn't sound like your mic's working, chat, so we can't hear you, unfortunately. Maybe you can put it in the chat if you're able to, no pun intended, but chat it into the chat. So I want to be clear while chat's typing that this is not about convincing your client to overcome their fear. This is not about helping them, like telling them it's just a story. Because to your client, and we'll cover this next time, it's not just a story. They actually have real world evidence that this is absolutely the reality that they exist in. That's the nature of all of this. And so what we're doing is just getting into conversation where we're connecting with them and staying with them in this dance. I saw someone come on and start talking there. It was someone on the phone.
Yeah, who is 21269? Oh, it's you, chat? It's you? Okay.
Oh, okay, it started to work there. We could almost hear you.
We heard it tapping. No, nothing.
Okay, alas.
Okay, so
we're
he put something in chat though.
Yeah, so I feel the issue of value for the client is so important. Absolutely. So the thing that I want to leave all of you with today, the most important thing is that you start to see these moments when the client has a yes, but as an opportunity to show them the power of coaching before you even started to work with them. This is a really beautiful thing that we're doing. We're saying, let's take working together off the table, just so that we can look at what's showing up and maybe support you to create a breakthrough here before we've even started to work together. Is that something you're interested in? And then we support them in looking at let's look at how money goes for you. Let's see how this thing showing up here is the same way it shows up over there. It's the same reason you're not yet married. It's the same reason, whatever. They distinguish that, not you. So that's what we'll dive into next week. please share all the questions that you've got around what we've talked about today in your feedback, and I'll make sure that we answer it one way or the other. I promise that we'll get to that. I'm also going to make sure that we send the infographic I've got today out ahead of time, along with the one on creating a client. That way you'll have that stuff. You can scan through it, and that'll prime you for what we're going to talk about next week. I'm going to give it over to you there, Nahid.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I loved this. I loved this whole idea of meeting your client at the place where they're afraid, and that place is so important because it's what they're afraid about when it comes to everything that they're trying to create in their life. So I am so excited about, continuing this next week. Now, Nora, do you have any last thoughts before we move on?
No. I too, I love this. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for your time and all your contribution to support us coaches to really make a difference. Is we got to have more clients, right? So that's the way.
Totally.
So I really appreciate you doing this for us.
My pleasure and honor.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for those infographics. Make sure that we get them out to everybody. Thank you all for being with us today. Adam, I could easily have, kind of sat and listened to you for another hour. But
so now you know why I listen to his podcast.
Yeah, I need to start doing that. Okay, so we will see you all next week, same time, and looking forward to it. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
How do you get